Item hash, SCP-004, Barndoor and 12 keys. Object class, Euclid. Description, SCP-004 consists of a old wooden barn door, SCP-004-1, and a set of 12 steel keys, SCP-004-1 through SCP-004-13. The door itself is the entrance to an abandoned factory inn, data expunged. Special containment procedure, when handling items SCP-004-2 through SCP-004-13, proper procedure is vital. The items are not permitted off-site unless accompanied by 2 Level 4 security personnel. Under no circumstances should any component of SCP-004 be taken through SCP-004-1. The effects of doing so are as yet unknown, and the current cost of experimentation makes further research impractical. Should any of the objects contained within SCP-004-1 breach containment, or the facility be breached, the keys must be brought inside and the door closed prior to activation of Site-62's on-site warhead. Unauthorized removal of keys from the testing area is grounds for immediate termination. Level 1 clearance is required for basic access to SCP-004. Level 4 clearance is required for the use of SCP-004-2 through SCP-004. Chronological history. July 2, 1949, a group of 3 juveniles trespassing on federal property near, data expunged, find the door. According to the testimony, they found a set of rusted keys in an iron lock box and determined what door the keys unlock. The juveniles are taken into custody after contact with sheriff, data expunged, when one of their friends, SCP-004, CAS-01, went missing. July 3, 1949, local authorities find the severed right hand of SCP-004, CAS-01 8 km from SCP-004-1. Other parts of SCP-004, CAS-01's body was found scattered as far as 32 km from the factory. Under interrogation, the apprehended juveniles tell authorities that upon opening the door with one of the keys, SCP-004, CAS-01 was torn into several pieces, each of which disappeared. At this point, the SCP Foundation takes over the investigation. July 4, 1949, SCP Agent, data expunged, obtains the keys from the local authorities to begin testing. Tests show that SCP-004-2 through SCP-004-13 all fit into a single lock on the large barred door. 12 Class D personnel are assigned to test the effects of the door. Of the 12 test subjects each trying a different key to enter the room, only 2 survive. Opening the door with any key except SCP-004-7 or SCP-004-12 caused the test subjects to be torn apart in multiple directions. However, no dismembered parts were found until later. At the time of writing, only 2 parts of each subject have been recovered, with the exception of the subject using SCP-004, whose pieces were scattered in close proximity. The others have, for all intents and purposes, vanished from existence. Of the 2 surviving subjects, only one, having used SCP-004-7, returned unharmed. The other came back in a near catatonic state, able only to remove himself from the room and then collapse on the floor, and had to be restrained to prevent him from gouging out his eyes. See Appendix A, Mental Health Effects of SCP-004. The subject using SCP-004-7 said that he had entered a large room, impossibly big for the size of the attached building. After his exit, SCP-004-1 was propped open and an armed squad of Level 3 personnel entered. The size of the room is impossible to measure and the door frame and the individuals in the room are the only part of the room that can be felt or illuminated. July 16, 1949, the juvenile suspects and sheriff, data expunged, are terminated. Space-time anomalies. SCP-004 seems to propagate spatio-temporal anomalies. Personnel leaving the facility report losing time. Those who have been in the site for weeks insist that they had only been in the facility for several days, and records of work completed and supplies consumed support their claims. Other temporal anomalies involve SCP-004-2 through -13, especially the reappearance of SCP-004-CAS-01 and SCP-004-CAS-02 exactly, Data expunged. Years after using SCP-004, data expunged has been assigned to investigate all aspects of these time anomalies. Spatial anomalies include the impossibly large dimensions of the area opened by SCP-004-7. Similarly, the 2003 blackout incident suggests that there exists an alternate plane of existence within the same space that Site-62 occupies. Testing on SCP-004 reveals that 10 of the keys open SCP-004-1 on a dimension where the laws of physics and topology are significantly different than those of our home dimension. Test subjects meeting these hostile conditions are torn apart, their body parts deposited in various locations, only 3 of which have been verified to be on Earth. Material deposited at 2 of these points appears immediately, material deposited at the 3rd appears exactly. Data expunged, years into the future. The other 7 locations are currently unknown. Current testing focuses on 2 avenues of research. The first is finding ways to survive SCP-004's hostile topologies. The second, data expunged, suggests that SCP-004-2 through -13 may open doors other than SCP-004-1. Appendix B, Additional Information. Item hash, SCP-004-14. Date of discovery, September 2, 1950. Origin of object. Object was discovered elsewhere in factory area, in the previously undiscovered manager's office. Description. Object appears as a large, unvarnished wooden box. The box may be unlocked by the safe key, SCP-004-7, as well as 5 of the unsafe keys, see document SCP-004-1. Upon unlocking SCP-004-14 with SCP-004-7, the box opens automatically on hinges. The volume of the space inside is precisely 5 times greater than the outer dimensions imply. Items placed within while the lid remains open do not affect the weight or any other properties of the box. When the lid is closed and locked, however, all items inside vanish irretrievably. Personnel locked inside the box are also irretrievable, although losing personnel in this fashion appears to affect significantly the dreams experienced by data expunged.